Okay, so for this deep dive, you sent us something pretty interesting.
Yeah.
The online presence of Graphic Studio and Gareth Robertson,
Yeah.
who's a brand and design specialist. And
Right.
you seem particularly interested in how he approaches building strong brands, especially for businesses
Right.
that are purpose-driven, not just focused on profit,
Exactly.
but on something more than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what we're going to do is help you get a better understanding
Yep.
of Robertson's methods for creating these brands with staying power for these purpose-driven organizations.
Right.
We're going to be looking at his underlying beliefs,
Right.
how he works with his clients, and the key things that he emphasizes. And we're going to base all this on his website.
Perfect. Yeah.
So first off, Gareth Robertson is based in the UK.
Okay.
And right off the bat, his website highlights his mission to help purpose-driven businesses
Right.
build brands that really connect. He started his first studio back in 2012.
Okay.
Spent 8 years building it up in Litchfield.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2020,
Okay.
moved down to the Southwest.
Right.
Now he runs Graphic Studio from his home,
Okay.
focusing on branding and graphic design.
Yeah.
What did you think was significant
Right.
in his initial presentation?
I think what was fascinating to me right away was that he emphasizes this purpose-led design.
Okay.
So he's not just talking about aesthetics,
Right.
He's positioning design as this tool for companies to create change
Okay.
and not just be seen, but really stand out
Right.
and make an impact. He also talks about working with ambitious founders,
Okay.
which suggests that he wants clients
Yeah.
who are really committed to their mission.
Okay, so it seems like building brands that last
Yeah,
is a big part of his thinking.
it is.
He talks about starting by identifying
This
these
is it.
key pillars of a brand.
Right.
Can you explain what those are? Yeah.
And maybe why he would start there.
These key pillars are the customer value proposition,
Okay.
the unique selling proposition,
Right.
and the mission.
Okay.
And he describes these as the DNA of the brand.
Okay.
So the CVP is essentially, what problem does this business solve
Right.
for its customer?
Okay.
What is the core value being offered? The USP is what makes it different from everybody else doing something similar.
Okay.
And the mission, which is especially important for purpose-driven businesses, is their fundamental reason for being.
Okay.
So, the why behind everything they do.
Right.
Now, what's interesting is the order he puts these in.
Okay.
So by starting with the customer value and what makes them unique, I think purpose-driven businesses ensure their mission is grounded in real-world impact.
Okay.
And not just aspirational ideals.
Right.
That makes it more sustainable. Okay, so you have these pillars.
Yeah.
And he talks about designing with purpose
Right.
to create this thing he calls a visual voice.
Right.
That's an interesting term.
Yeah.
What does he mean by that?
Well, he says the visual voice is basically how a brand communicates through its visuals.
Right.
So that's things like their logo, the colors they use, the fonts, the overall style of the imagery.
Yeah.
And he emphasizes that this visual voice should bring a sense of clarity, confidence, and pride to the business. It's not just about being attractive.
Okay.
It's about creating a visual representation
Right.
that really reflects those core pillars that we just talked about.
So the value, the uniqueness, and the mission.
Right.
So when you align the visuals with that purpose, it creates a much stronger impression.
Right. A more authentic impression.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
He talks about aligning the brand's story with a clear creative strategy and visual identity to really connect with the audience and achieve what he calls real results. It sounds like he sees branding as much more integrated than just creating a logo and some colors.
Exactly. He's arguing that effective branding has to be holistic.
Right.
You need to weave together the business's narrative with their strategic goals and how that's expressed visually. And the aim is to connect with their audience in an authentic way. So by real results, I think he means things like engagement from their audience or brand recognition or a more sustainable model for their purpose.
He also says that branding and design are about storytelling with purpose and precision, creating something the business is proud to own.
Right.
And that really speaks to the emotional connection people have with brands.
Absolutely. And for businesses driven by a mission, that sense of pride comes from knowing their brand represents their values and the positive change they're trying to create.
Right. He wants the business to be seen, heard, and remembered for all the right reasons.
Exactly.
Which really underscores the importance of authenticity and communicating clearly.
Right.
Let's talk more about storytelling.
Okay.
He spends a lot of time on this idea of the power of storytelling for purpose-driven brands. What were some key insights for you there?
Well, I think the main message is that for companies whose reason for being is more than just making money, their story is fundamental. It's about being able to clearly say why the business exists and does what it does, not just what they offer. He says that a compelling story is what builds connections. What people
inspires action and cultivates loyalty.
Think about the brands you feel connected to. You feel that way because you understand and believe in their story.
He also says that a good brand story communicates the purpose and aligns the business mission with the audience's values. That seems really important.
It is. In today's world, customers are very discerning. They want to support brands that share their values. And a good story can position a business as more than just a company. It can position them as a movement. So it creates this sense of shared identity and purpose with their audience.
And you also talk about consistency.
Yeah, it's not just about telling the story once. It's about weaving it into all your communications. That builds authenticity over time and strengthens the brand.
And finally, he says that growth for these kinds of companies isn't just about getting bigger. It's about expanding their impact.
With the story guiding not just customers, but also their teams and even partners. So that's a different way to think about growth.
It is. The story becomes the guiding force. It provides direction for everyone involved.
Okay, so how does Graphic Studio actually work with clients? So he outlines a specific process.
He does.
With a few stages. The first one is the creative clinic. What does that look like?
Well, the creative clinic sounds like the initial phase. The deep dive, as he puts it. To uncover what makes the brand unique. It happens in person or via Zoom. And it involves really digging into those pillars we discussed earlier.
So the brand's personality,
the ideal client,
and
mission.
Okay, so after the creative clinic, they move into the visual voice stage.
Exactly.
Which sounds like where the design work begins.
This is where the actual creation of the identity happens.
And it's all based on what they discovered in the creative clinic. So that's the personality, the audience, and the mission. This is about giving the brand a visual presence.
And the final stage is the brand builder. What's involved in that?
Well, this is about helping clients take that brand and that visual voice and actually implement it. So he offers help with the graphic design work. So that's designing marketing materials, updating their website visuals, creating social media templates, and really bringing the brand to life.
He has a section called Let's Not Beat Around the Bush,
where
he talks about the need for investment and input from the client. That's setting some clear expectations.
It is. He's saying this is a partnership. He needs the client to be actively involved. He says that the relationship is built on trust. And it's a two-way street.
He also mentions an onboarding call.
It's
a way to see if it's a good fit.
It's like a mutual assessment to make sure their approaches and expectations align.
So if it's not a good fit, they know that right away.
Exactly.
And then he gets into the packages and prices. He lists a few different combinations of his services.
So he offers the full works, which includes all three stages, starting at £4,950. Then there's the visual voice package, which combines the deep dive with the design of the identity, starting at £2,950. And then for clients who maybe just need help with the foundations, they can just do the creative clinic, which starts at £1,450. He also offers bespoke briefs for more tailored projects.
So this staged payment structure seems to reflect the importance
I think it does.
he puts on the branding process.
by being transparent about the prices. I think he's underscoring the value he places on branding.
So finally, let's consider the website itself.
Okay.
Both the visuals and the language.
Right.
What stood out to you?
Well, there are a lot of hashtags.
Okay.
Like hashtag branding for purpose-driven businesses, or hashtag visual voice to inspire action, or hashtag brand that lasts and fuels growth.
Right.
And those communicate his focus very clearly.
Okay.
The website also features what seems to be a feed where he shares his work and thoughts.
Yeah.
So it seems like he's engaging with the design community.
Okay.
There are themes like hashtag 100 days off design and discussions about designer problems, which give his website a more personal feel. And importantly, there are calls to action throughout the website, like book a call or see portfolio, work with me. And the language overall speaks to businesses with a purpose beyond profit.
So in summary, Gareth Robertson offers a pretty focused approach to branding.
Yeah, he emphasizes understanding the foundations, harnessing the power of stories. And following a clear process to develop a lasting identity.
For you, the listener, think about the core story and the purpose driving your initiative. Are you communicating that clearly? And how might a more strategic approach to branding help amplify your impact? It might be time to think about your own visual voice. You can find out more about Graphic Studio by visiting their website.
Exactly. You can find their portfolio there and all their contact information.
Okay. Well, this has been a great deep dive.
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks for joining.
It was my pleasure.
And we'll see you next time.
All right. See you later.
Bye.